Our first speaker. His name is Dr. Kevin Stillwagon. I had the pleasure of meeting him yesterday, an incredible human being. He was actually raised in a chiropractic family, and it's amazing how the chiropractors now, you look at like, they knew all along, we should have listened, right? So he was raised without any vaccines, believe it or not, and believe it or not, he's still here to tell the tale. Can you imagine? I don't know how that happens. Right? So he followed in his father's footsteps. He became a chiropractor in 1980, licensed in the state of Florida and in Pennsylvania. Self-published a book in 1984 on medical freedom. So he's been on this bandwagon before many of us were born, and we were thankful for that. He actually invented and patented a thermographic device in 1985 and taught people how to use it all around the world. In early 2020, he actually he was an airline pilot as well, and then he saw what was happening, and they said, hey, you got to put a thing on your face, and he said, no, I'm not willing to do that, so he is no longer an airline pilot, but he has the courage of his convictions. He continues to speak out at school boards and other places. He is just an incredible human being. I'm very honored to introduce to you Dr. Kevin Stillwagon.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. On September the 9th, Joe Biden thought he declared war against a virus. He actually declared war against our freedoms. He will lose. We are in the most critical war of our lifetime, and all of you must recognize that you are in this war, whether you want to be or not. And it doesn't even matter if you got the jab or not at this point. Now, we are making some good headway in Florida. But clearly, the national road that we're headed down with these medical mandates is an invasion of your basic human rights. It is taking away your freedom and your bodily autonomy. And this is actually more dangerous than any virus ever could be. Because if we don't do something about this right now on a global scale, the day is coming where you will be forced to do something against your will, and we cannot let that happen. We will win this war on two fronts. The first is non-compliance, since compliance is the food that feeds totalitarianism. So I have news for the tyrants. We are cutting off your food supply by the mantra, I will not comply. And if you tyrants try to cut off our food supply, we will grow our own food. And if you try to cut off our access to society, we will create our own airlines and our own supply lines and medical care and any other services we need to create a parallel, superior society with no discriminations. But we have to be bold on the non-compliance front. Sir, you cannot come in, you can't be in here without a mask. I'm in. And that mask you're wearing, pull it up over your eyes, because clearly you cannot see what's really going on here. And maybe with your nose exposed, you'll be able to smell something fishy. Sir, you have to be tested if you're not vaccinated. If you come near me with that stick and try to shove it up my nose, you will be inserting an object into an orifice of my body against my will, and I will charge you with rape. And let me tell you how stupid testing is for this virus. We all breathe about 100 million various viruses every day, whether we wear a mask or not. And these viruses get trapped in your mucus naturally. So if you look for them there, you will find them there. And that does not mean that you are infected or even will develop symptoms. And that is why millions of people have tested positive and never got sick. And that should be a clue to everyone that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is not the cause of COVID-19 symptoms. The cause of COVID-19 symptoms is the inability of your immune system to deal with the virus. In fact, it is not a virus that kills you. It is the subsequent pneumonia and cardiovascular problems in the severely immunosuppressed that is deadly, just as it has been with exposure to viruses since the beginning of time. Another example is the Streptococcus bacteria that most of you have in your throat right now, yet you're not displaying any symptoms of strep throat because your immune system is keeping you in harmony with it. The second war that we will win the second front that we will win this war on is knowledge. Knowledge of how your immune system actually works. And Fauci does not want you to know this because he will no longer be able to control you and keep you in fear. Now, I am not an immunologist. I am a science communicator and an immune system enthusiast who just happens to be a retired chiropractor and airline captain who has the ability to read, comprehend, and explain complex science in a way that is easy to understand. And that's why I'm here today. So I can give you the science on how to turn jet fuel into noise, but I'd rather give you the science on your beautifully designed, God-given, innate immune system. The immune system is the most complicated system in your body. It is extremely complex and an extension of the nervous system. It is not meant to be intuitively understood by humans running around with smartphones, so I will try to keep it simple. So here we go. All right. In order for a virus to infect you, it must cross a barrier from the outside of you to the inside of you, which is a very difficult thing to do for a virus if you have a strong immune system. So this barrier between the outside and the inside of you is like a self-repairing fence. It is called the epithelium, and it includes the lining of your mouth and nose all the way into your lungs. It includes the esophagus and the digestive tract and all the way out the other end. It includes the urinary tract and the reproductive tract. Now, covering this epithelium is mucus, which contains small amounts of hypochlorite and hydrogen peroxide, which can actually oxidize viruses and render them useless. Also, in the mucus are tiny hairs called cilia that continuously sweep the viruses from the lower respiratory tract into the upper respiratory tract so that they can be coughed, sneezed, or spit out into a tissue, not to a piece of cloth strapped to your face all day. So I've got news for you, Fauci. If you really want to keep people healthy, do not make them trap pathogens near their mouths and noses. And don't be shoving sticks up their noses either, with the potential of jamming the viruses that are in there directly through the mucus and into the epithelium. Just beneath the mucus are latches on this fence called ACE2 receptors, spelled ACE2. Now, viruses will attach to these receptors, and when they do, the innate intelligence within your body knows this and will begin to notify the immune system that something is going on. And the decision can actually be made at that point to either allow the virus to gain entry or to reject the virus. Now, you see, viruses are not living things. They are genetic material inside of protein shells that are actually made in bacteria, fungi, animals, and other humans, so that we can actually use the genetic material inside of them if necessary. Now, since viruses are not alive, they can also be made in laboratories. And Ralph Barrick, funded by Fauci, has been doing this for decades. Unfortunately, this virus was made in a laboratory to use what's called a furin cleavage site to immediately allow viral entry after it attaches to the ACE2 receptor. This is called gain of function, Fauci, in case you forgot. And that's how evil these people are. They have increased the infectivity of the virus so that it can enter your cells as soon as it attaches, taking away the God-given innate ability of your immune system to reject it. But do not be afraid of this, for God has designed you with the ability to stop these cells from copying the virus and allowing the virus to get inside of you, which is called an infection. The virus can get inside of the cells that are on the fence, but they will not be able to get through the fence in a person with a healthy immune system. Now, here's how that works. Just beneath the fence are dendritic cells, and there's a picture of one up there on the screen. These cells are fascinating. They have tentacles like an octopus that can reach through the fence, grab the protein or grab the virus that is attached to the receptor. Okay? Chop it all up into the 28 proteins it is made of and show all of these proteins to the T cells that are on the inside of the fence. It's asking the T cells, do you recognize the parts of this virus? If the answer is yes, the T cells will become activated to immediately destroy any cell on the fence before the cell can copy the virus and release it to the inside of you. Then that cell is going to be replaced with a new one, and that's why I called it a self-repairing fence. Now, the most beautiful thing is the T cells in people who have not been jabbed have long-lasting memory that will react to similar viruses it has dealt with before. Science knows this because blood samples that were taken from people before the SARS-CoV-2 virus even existed had T cells that reacted to this man-made virus. And that, my fellow patriots, is immunity. Now, notice I never used the word antibody. So I've got news for you, Fauci. Immunity does not reside in antibodies. Immunity does not reside in antibodies. Immunity does not reside in antibodies. Where does immunity reside? It resides in the ability of your innate immune system to recognize viruses it has dealt with before and keep them out. So what Fauci wants you to do is bypass that beautifully designed fence and inject something inside of you that will create antibodies that will always remain inside of you, that can only react to something once it gets inside of you. Did you get what I just said? Antibodies can only react to something after it has infected you. So antibodies created by these injections that they call vaccines cannot prevent infections, cannot prevent the spread of infections, and they were never designed to do so because they are on the wrong side of the fence. That's why the definition of vaccination was very cleverly changed in September. The words immunity and prevention used to be in the definition, but not anymore. The new definition states that the vaccine provides some protection against disease. Now, the disease is not the infection. The disease is the symptoms of an infection. And what did Fauci say right from the start? We are hopeful that the injection will lessen the severity of symptoms, not necessarily prevent infection. And that's not working out for Fauci because every person in Belgium right now in COVID intensive care units are fully vaccinated. And you're going to find out why that is right now. So this is what happens when you inject this stuff. All of the COVID shots in the United States contain messenger RNA that will force the cells of your body to make spike proteins. These spike proteins will get into your blood and most certainly result in antibody production. But there are consequences. First off, science found that the spike protein is harmful, but they kept right on going with it. And remember those beautiful, like dendritic, octopus-looking cells? the numbers of them drop after the shot, basically destroying your immune system. And science knows this. So why would you do this to yourself? Remember those T cells with memory that could recognize all parts of the virus and destroy cells that contain the virus on the fence before it gets copied and released inside of you? Well, their numbers drop as well. And another job of those T cells is to keep cancer under check. So now we are seeing people who are in cancer remission prior to the shot having raging metastatic cancer after the shot. And we all have dormant viruses within us. And we're finding now that before the shot, these viruses remain dormant, but after the shot, they're no longer dormant, including HIV, shingles, papillomas. No wonder frontline doctors and nurses that are seeing this firsthand are kind of backing away from this shot. The long-term memory T cells that I talked about, well, that's gone too. Well, how does that happen? This shot creates literally billions of spike proteins from the original virus that doesn't even exist anymore. The problem with this is the T cells get retrained to recognize only the original spike protein, not the mutated one, and definitely not the entire virus. So the T cells in people who got jabbed will not recognize variants, and infections will be allowed to happen. So what about those antibodies on the inside of a jabbed person that Fauci's so worried about? Well, they will bind to the mutated virus, but they will not be able to neutralize it because the spike protein is different now. So, Fauci wants you to get booster shots to create more original spike proteins, to create more useless antibodies that will not neutralize the mutated virus. What are we doing? This is not good science. This is a dog chasing its own tail. I want you to think about this. The antibodies that are created by the first shot can overreact to the spike proteins created by the second shot or the booster shot and set off what is called the complement cascade. You have 15 quintillion proteins of 30 different varieties circulating in your blood at all times. This is what's called the complement system. And when it gets activated, it will attract white blood cells to the cells in your body that have the spike proteins attached to them. This is an inflammatory response and will cause significant tissue damage. And when this happens in the heart, it creates severe myocarditis, which is permanent and could be deadly. And this is why we are seeing dramatic increases in myocarditis after the second shot or booster shots, even in perfectly healthy children. So do not jab your children. Now, I could go on and on about possible adverse reactions from this shot, including autoimmune diseases and antibody-dependent enhancement and the microclotting that will create a pathology 2 to 5 years from now. But in the interest of time, I want to talk about one more thing, and that is the faulty administration of the shot. So the first thing that's supposed to happen is the tech administering the shot is required by law to state that the injection is not FDA approved, severe side effects can happen, and you have the right to refuse the shot. This is called informed consent, and this is not happening. So all of these people are breaking the law, and they're not going to prison yet, but Nuremberg 2 is on the horizon. The next thing that happens is the shot must be prepared by the technician for injection. Billions of these vials have been made and shipped all over the world. There is poor quality control. Japan found millions of vials that were contaminated and rejected them. Independent investigators here in the U.S. are finding vials that are contaminated. Where is the oversight of the FDA for safety is what I want to know. The quality control was actually shifted to the technician who prepares this mixture for injection. The instructions are very specific, and the technician is instructed 3 times to inspect the vial to make sure it looks exactly right or it is to be discarded. Now, here are the instructions, and I'll read them fast. 1, thaw it prior to dilution, no more than 2 hours at a temperature no hotter than 77 degrees. 2, before dilution, invert the vial gently 10 times. Do not shake it. 3, inspect the color. Do not use, if not white, to off-white, or if particles other than white opaque amorphous particles are present. 4, withdraw exactly 1.8 milliliters of the diluent shipped separately into a transfer syringe and inject it into the vial. 5, equalize the pressure in the vial by withdrawing 1.8 milliliters of air into the now empty transfer syringe. 6, invert the vial again gently 10 times. Do not shake it. 7, inspect the vial again for color and suspension of particles. 8, record the date and time of the dilution on the vial and store it between 35 and 77 degrees and discard it if not used within 6 hours. 9, withdraw exactly 0.3 milliliters from the vial to the syringe. 10, inspect it a 3rd time for color and suspension. 11, avoid direct exposure to sunlight. And 12, inject it immediately into the muscle only. Now, if you think that procedure cannot get screwed up in a hot, sunny day church parking lot with lines of cars and people with their arms hanging out the window waiting for their sacrament of vaccination, you are not using your God-given intelligence. Now, the next thing that happens is the technician sticks the needle in the arm and pushes the plunger, having absolutely no idea where the tip of that needle is. If the tip of the needle is in a blood vessel, the particles that will create the spike protein rapidly spread all over the body. How many particles? We have no way of knowing. It could be anywhere from 10 billion to 100 billion, depending upon how the injection was prepared. It's literally Russian roulette. We also have no way of knowing if the particles lost their ability to separate themselves from each other, allowing them to coagulate and form clots that can almost immediately result in strokes or heart attacks, which does happen. That's why the technician is instructed 3 times to verify that they're not injecting you with coagulating goo. In closing, the immunity from a natural infection is robust and long-lasting, but it is ruined by getting this jab. So do not jab the naturally immune. And the risks of a child developing dangerous blood clots and myocarditis is far greater than any benefit they could ever get from the shot. But that is not the worst of it. By mass inoculating children, we will destroy their innate immune system. We will destroy it. And that is where the protection from all viruses resides. This is going to be disastrous to the health of our children, and it will never allow us to get to herd immunity. Don't do it.
Give it up for Dr. Stillwagon, folks. Incredible.